everybody, in today's video we are going to be taking a look at these two machines. There we go. We're going to be taking a look at these two machines. We're going to be comparing them. This one right here is Creality's sister company, SparkX. This is the i7. And here we have Anycubic's Kobra X. But both of these machines I'm going to be comparing in this video today, while you guys are comparing them to the BambuLab A1. If you can tell from a distance, they look about the same, but there couldn't be more different than the BambuLab machine. Now, there is a lot out there on the BambuLab machine already. It has been out for years. Very popular, fantastic machine. In fact, I have the BambuLab A1 Mini here in the studio. I've had it here for years, been using it for years. I've even called that machine one of the best 3D printers of 2025. If you guys want more information on that, check out the video link that's popping up above me right there. So we're not going to be directly comparing it here in the studio. However, I'm going to be talking about it and you guys can compare it to the BambuLab A1. And if you guys are in the market for a machine like that, a bedslinger, something cheap, something really simple, easy to get into, super easy to maintain, I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of these. However, each one of them has their own quirks, each one of them has their pros, each one has their cons. And today we're going to do it this way. I made a bunch of different categories such as firmware, unique features, price, sizing, that type of thing. We're going to go through each one of those sections. We're going to learn more about each one of these two machines here, and each one of the machines is going to have a chance to earn a point in that category based on how well they place themselves or how well they do. All right, so pretty simple. Let's just get right into it. I'm going to start with probably the most important part of this whole thing is firmware. The reason I say that is because the BambuLab machines, they're all in a walled-in garden. Bambu controls the firmware, Bambu controls the hardware. And unlike that, these machines both run on Klipper. However, the reason why I want to talk about this first is because you might not even get past this category and already choose your own machine. Let me explain. Yes, they both run on Klipper. Both companies have their own custom versions of Klipper that they've renamed. We are talking about Creality OS on the SparkX, Anycubic's own here. However, Anycubic does not release or unlock the firmware in any way. And as you guys know, those machines that are running Klipper, it is an open source firmware, which means if they're running it and making money of it, if they're releasing anything, they have to also make their firmware open. Anycubic does not do that. However, we do have full access to the i7's firmware. If you type in the IP address of the machine in your browser and add :4408, you will get the fluid interface, and from there you can do configurations. You can send the machine and use it with different slicers. You're not locked in any way. You don't even have to use that interface at all if you don't want to. You can just use the machine as is with Creality's slicer. However, if you wanted to get in deep, if you wanted to do more with your machine, if you wanted to customize it further or make your own macros, the i7, you can even have root access, which means you can install different apps on top of it, things like that. You have full access to your machine, to what you bought, to your hardware with that machine. But Anycubic has definitely locked us out, which means we're locked out of different slicers. We're definitely locked in with theirs, and that's going to definitely rub a lot of people the wrong way. Because this is open, we have full control. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to pick the SparkX i7 as the winner for this category. And that's why I said you might not even get past this part. The firmware might not matter to some folks, but if you're somebody like me who's been doing this for years, who's builds machines, gets into the nitty-gritty, talks about open source, constantly advocates for it, this is definitely going to be one of those things where I would avoid it just for that. However, they do have some amazing hardware here, and I want to give them a chance because I do think that there's people out there that are just not going to even think about this aspect of the hobby, and I think personally that that's totally okay. So at least for firmware, I'm going to say that the i7 gets the point right off the bat. And if you made it this far and you haven't already made your choice just based on that, let's keep going, because the next category here is unique feature. Today's video is sponsored by PCBWay. They're an amazing resource for anything 3D printed, injection molded, CNC machining. The list goes on and on and on. Check out PCBWay.com for an amazing and extensive list of resources and services that they provide, and also a community tab where you can check out other projects by other makers, and you can purchase the projects and everything that you need for them right there. Not just PCBs. The list goes on and on with everything they do, and I guarantee you, just like I was surprised, you will be surprised by how reasonable the pricing is. So check out PCBWay, and thank you, PCBWay, for sponsoring this video. When you're looking for a machine, there's going to be something on pretty much every machine that's going to catch your eye that you're going to be like, that's cool, I like that, or that's cool, let's look into that. And both of these machines definitely have that. For the i7, it is the CFS Lite, which is this box right over here. This is where you put your filament spools, and there's 4 motors on the top that kind of push and pull the filament from the extruder of the machine. What makes this great is this thing is detachable. It usually comes on the side, so if you have a bunch of horizontal space, you can put it there. Or you can print this bracket, put this thing on top. That makes these machines much more similar and comparable. Takes the space off your desk and puts it up there, and that is really cool. But that's not the thing that makes this great. The fact that the motors are on top of this filament management here, and the door opens downward, that makes this one of the more unique setups out of all of the other filament management systems that exist right now. And the reason why I mention that is because the motors being on top means filament gets pulled upward. When filament gets pulled up, the spool no longer matters. It could be dented, it could be banged up, it could be a smaller spool, a fatter spool. That part no longer matters, and I think that that is awesome. I actually would really love to see another version of the CFS Lite, but maybe a non-light version, maybe something with a heater in it or a dryer. I think that would be fantastic. I really love the way that it looks and is set up. This is one of those things where this design is unique, and if you guys look at other companies that make management systems, even like Anycubic, they're all extremely similar, and once again, once you squint, they look the same. However, that is definitely a very unique feature to this machine. It comes with it as the combo. It's just a really cool piece of hardware, and it's very simple. It's very simple, it's very light, it has very little moving parts. That's an awesome little piece right there. However, on the other end of that, the Kobra X has this really incredible extruder design, and the cool thing is, instead of all the other management systems that have a 4-to-1 PTFE tube system, all 4 tubes go directly into this extruder. They don't go into one, and the extruder itself is very complicated, yet brilliant. The design here means that there is gears inside that pick and choose which one of the filament that they pull, and one of the cool things in there is there's also pressure sensitivity built in. So if you are changing filament to, let's say, something softer like a TPU, the grip is going to be less, and it's dynamic in that sense, which just makes this a really smart and really cool system. It even has a filament ejection port, 4 of them on the sides, and what that's for is when you run a filament all the way in, instead of it trying to push it all the way through, it ejects that filament out of the side, and it's a really unique way to get rid of that waste instead of just burning it through. It just lets you pick it up, get it out of there, and you're good to go. I think this is absolutely brilliant design, and I would love to see more of this. I would implore Anycubic to make an IDEX version of this machine, or a slightly larger machine with 2 of these. I would implore them to put this tool head on Core XY machines, maybe 2 or even 4 of these things, where each one of them has their own 4 filament system. I think that would be major, and the fact that this hardware exists and they're running Clipper, I know that they could do it. As far as hardware, they could totally do it if they really wanted to. I think this is a really unique and great system. And, well, it works and prints great, at least in my opinion. So I would love to see this system on other machines for sure. So here, if you were asking me which one of those is the most unique feature, I'm going to say that this tool head and the automated extruder and cutter system in here is definitely the winner. So Anycubic gets a point here. Next up, we have the price, and this is going to be the third or the easiest next thing to pick a printer. So on the i7 right over here, the machine just alone starts at $260, which is an amazing price to get into for just a single color. It's great. Then it has a little bit of expandability where you can buy the CFS Mini, which is basically a way to expand 1 to 2 rolls of spool. So if one runs out, it just goes to the next one. So if you're printing a lot with a single color, you can also get that and use that instead of this or instead of the single, and have that as a pretty cool feature. However, that runs at $280. And then you have, of course, this combo that you see here at $370, at least at the time of when I was researching. If you ask me, $370 for a machine like this is pretty good, especially the quality that everything is on here and the amount of control that you get. I would say that that is priced pretty well. However, this machine, with its setup with spools on over here with the Gen Ace, runs at $270. So quite literally $100 less for the Anycubic machine, and $270 makes this machine very, very easy to get into the hobby. And that's why I wanted to include it, even though I personally have gripes with the firmware aspect of this. $270 is an amazing price for something that has an integrated 4-spool multicolor system and is this capable with, you know, PLA, P2G, and TPU. It's absolutely fantastic. So once again, the Anycubic Kobra X gets a point for price at $270. Now we're going to get into slightly smaller points from here on out, moving on to print size. So print size is another really common question, and the BambuLab machine, for example, is famously sized 256, 256, 256, whereas the i7 goes at 260, 260, 255, and we have 260, 260, 260 on the Anycubic. So we're talking a 5mm difference between these two machines. I don't know if 5mm on the X is actually going to matter, okay? But we're gonna have to give the Kobra X a point here because it is a larger volume, and you know, specs don't lie, numbers don't lie. So there you go, another point. Now let's move on to footprint. The reason why I wanted to include footprint is because it could be tricky to place these machines into your studio, into your bedroom, into your basement, whatever it might be, on your office desk, because on these machines the bed moves forward and they move further than the machine, and they move backward and they move further than the machine backward too. So if you have a shallow desk or a shallow rack that you're putting these things onto, you got to consider that. And if you can't have the space going that way, then they're also very tall machines. The CFS Lite, however, can be moved down, so that's a big benefit there, right? But they just take up a kind of an awkward amount of space. They're good on a desktop, good on top of a table, but if you're trying to put a bunch of these things somewhere, they kind of get a little awkward. The other benefit for the i7 here is that the screen rotates, so you can have this sitting sideways and still have access to the screen, whereas the screen off to the side here is hard mounted and could potentially get in some of the way of your table setup. But there's another part we got to consider here. So the sizing itself. So the i7 is 470 by 456 by 423 with a 90.6 total length, whereas the Kobra is 461 455 by 444 with a 93.3 total length. So on the desktop, the Kobra X is a little bit more awkward and takes up just a little bit more space. So because this is a more compact design, because you can move the CFS on or off the machine, I'm going to give the point to the i7 here for being a little bit more versatile and just having a better footprint. All right, next up is going to be the materials. Now this one, admittedly, is going to be a deadlock. And what I mean by that is both of them can get up to 300 Celsius and 100 on the bed. So there's not going to be a difference of what of these are more compatible with. You're going to be doing your standard PLA, P2G, TPU, maybe some PIBA, maybe some PC blend, but you're not going to be doing a bunch of ABS or nylon. This is an open machine. Unless you put these things into a grow tent or something like that, it's going to be a hassle doing those films. filaments, I would just stick with the basics: PLA, TPU, PETG, and you're gonna have a good time. And I've done a whole bunch of prints on both of these. There's actually a lot of prints that I printed on these things, a bunch of flexies and print and place things that I was giving away, some boxes that are back there. You can't see them on the desk because I'm literally using them for other projects. There's a lot that I've printed on these things, and they did a fantastic job. So materials, we can either give them both a point or not give either of them a point. They can do the same materials. Next up is we have print quality. Now, in terms of the prints that I've actually printed quite a bit on both of these machines, and there's a lot of prints that I either gave away or are being used somewhere else in the house, so they're not on display here. But I've had both these machines for about 3 months, so I've had a really long time to have them here, to use them, to test them against each other, and the print quality was actually really hard to place. If I was to pick up some of these prints and mix and match them, there's no way you're going to be able to tell which machine printed what. They're very, very close in their waste. They're really, really close in their print quality, and you're just not going to tell. However, in my personal example, out of these two machines, my Kobra X has an issue where if I'm printing a larger part that's flat on the bottom, the right side of my bed just gets squished and it gets those waves in it. And because there's no way to adjust it, because I can't get into Clipper, I can't further tune this machine out of that problem. So if I'm printing smaller parts, as you can see, it does fantastic. However, if I print a big flat part, the right side of my machine always gets those wrinkles from the bed being a little bit too close to the nozzle, or the other way around, and there's just no way that I can tune it out of that. Something is just slightly bent, and usually machines can compensate for that. It tries. I've tried all kinds of things, but no matter what I tried, no matter what filament I tried, no matter how much I let the bed heat up, my mind just has that problem. However, the prints are still fantastic, so I'm giving this an A-, and the i7 gets the A+ for print quality, so we're going to give the point to the i7. And then the final category, upgrade path. Now, I always really like machines that give you an upgrade path, because you can get into them for a lower cost, and as you get to know printing more, as you enjoy the machine more, you can spend a little bit more and usually upgrade them, change them, add on to them, and just get a better experience as time goes on, instead of that experience being stale. So upgrade path to me personally in a machine is pretty important. Like I mentioned earlier, the i7, the only way you're going to upgrade this is if you don't get it with the CFS Lite, and get it with nothing, or the CFS Mini, and then you'll be able to upgrade to a CFS Lite. I actually don't think that's much upgradability. However, you do have that option, which is always nice. But on the Kobra, you're getting 4 spools right away for an extremely low cost, and you can add up to 4 ACE units. The ACE units are very similar to the CFS non-light, where they have a heater/dryer system in them. You can use the ACE or the ACE 2. They're readily available, and you can put up to 4 additional ones on here, which I think makes it, let's see what I write, 19 colors. You can add 19 colors to the machine. Now, that is really, really expensive at about 270-ish or so per unit add-on. I don't know why you would spend that amount of money on this machine. If you had that kind of budget, you would just buy a larger Core XY enclosed machine, probably. However, if you did really start to enjoy and just love this machine, and you already had it, and you want to throw another 270 at it just to have another 4 filaments that are enclosed, like for PETG, for example, that you can dry, I think that's great. That's way more upgradable than this machine. That way you can just have it sitting there. You have your spools inside. So if you had 1 more, for example, or even 2 on each side of this thing, you can just have those spools there, and you don't have to worry about which ones you choose or have to take in and out. They're just there. So I actually really like that luxury. I'm not recommending that you necessarily go ahead and spend the money on that up front, but if you're really enjoying this machine and it's doing everything that you wanted, I really like the fact that you can get more upgradability out of it. So the point in that case is going to go to the Kobra X for an upgrade path. All right, so if we start to look at our list here, let's go to the i7. The i7 wins in firmware, it wins in footprint, it wins for materials, and it wins for print quality. So that is 4 points for the i7. The Anycubic Kobra X wins for its unique feature toolhead. It wins for price. it wins for print size, it wins for materials, and it wins for upgrade path. So we're talking a 4 to 5 or a 3 to 4 victory, depending on what you think about the material category. So here it is. That's how we're going to take a look at it. So if you don't care about the firmware aspect, the fact that they're using an open source firmware, standing on the shoulders of open source and then making money off of it, if that's okay with you, then this is actually a slightly better machine, at least based on our testing, than the i7. However, if firmware does matter to you, if you're a fan of Clipper and that's why you're looking at these machines in the first place over the Bambu machine, the i7 is just going to win out every single time, and it's still going to give you an amazing machine for what it is, that's really capable, and it's going to be able to give you that Clipper aspect where you can tune it. You're not tied down to any kind of slicer, etc., etc., etc. So both are fantastic machines. The BambuLab is also fantastic machines. I love all three because they get more people into the hobby. That's huge for me. I love to see more people get into 3D printing. So with that, I'm going to leave you to make that choice. Hopefully this will help you in that. Guys, don't forget, if you go to 3dprintsos.com, you can pick up some pretty cool merch like this. And as always, I'll see you guys in the comments. Later.